Welcome, everyone, to what will quite possibly be the greatest episode of the CE Inside webinar series because of our guest today. Before I introduce him, however, we do have some housekeeping. If you have any questions, we do have a Q&A channel open, and so you can just drop your questions right in there, and we will try and get to them as quickly as we can as we move through the process, particularly if it's relevant to the specific thing that we're talking about at that moment. But if it should happen that there are a lot of questions and we can't get to all of them in the time allotted, we're going to try and get them answered afterwards, and we will send that out. So, with that said, welcome everyone. This is Inside the Business of Safety, and today we are joined by Trevor Bent, CEO of Easson, and also Mark Murrell from Carrier's Edge. Now, the trick, I think the big draw in marketing this webinar was that we've got someone who has got chops on both sides. So CEO Trevor Bent, fantastic. Yes, you got the executive side, you know, the business side, but also apparently you've got some experience as a safety person. Now, if it should happen that people don't believe that, I have a little... Mark knows what's going.
Yes.
See what I can find it here.
I'd forgotten that you were planning to do this.
Let's see if this pops up. Oh, there it is.
Yes.
Sure
Video
enough.
that we did.
Trevor Bent, risk manager right there. I don't know how many years ago that was, but
many.
Just a couple.
A few years ago, Rick, for sure. Absolutely. That's a blast.
Well, at the time, Eason's was, I think, running 120 trucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are you up to now?
340.
Right. So
yeah,
you've had some growth. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like about a 2010 shot there, I'd say.
Yeah.
10 years of rubber under the wheels on since then. But anyway, yeah, good. Yeah. Nice throwback there, Rick.
So with that, do you think you could give us, you know, sort of the Coles notes of your trajectory sort of in the industry and in Eason's specifically, how you got to where you are and where you came from?
I sure can. Yeah. Thanks for having me today. First and foremost, nice to be here and share this time with you folks. Yeah, I've been around the safety world for quite some time. Early days back in construction with my uncle. That's where I got my first sort of connection with safety. We were doing some government contracts, and he needed somebody to help get those tenders signed up for the government jobs. And I put my hand up saying I'd help out, and that's kind of where it started. And took a bunch of training and started down that road, and realized pretty quickly that it was something that I had a bit of a passion for. So. Then moving sort of fast forwarding on through after I got married, I took a job with the pipelines actually, and worked through the Maritimes as the pipeline project came through here, and got some experience in the construction end of things. Then I moved on from there in the safety capacity at JD Irving Limited it was probably the second longest stint I've had with any company to date. And I took on a few different roles there over that course of that 9 years, but safety was definitely paramount in my time there. In 2009, I moved along to Easson and moved back home in the Annapolis Valley. Want to get closer to the folks and spend some more time with and bring up our kids here. So I took a job with Eason's Transport. I remember at the time looking at this little job ad, thinking about, trucking. I have no idea what what it's all about, and decided to put my resume in. And geez, I met the Easson owners at the time, and I remember saying to my wife, doesn't matter what it pays, doesn't matter. I just have to work for these guys. They remind me of my dad, and they're just good guys, and I got to help them grow their business. That's kind of as simple as that was. And then I took on safety here and HR combined. And then kind of the rest is history. Moved along into operations here and took on roles within HR, family succession, because it's a family owned and operated business. So they were looking for somebody with an HR background too to help grow the business and the family members in it. as the owners were exiting and the young folks were coming in. So kind of had a few different bags of tricks to bring to the table at the time, and then found my way into operations and into a higher level leadership role with the group here. So that's kind of the trajectory. Been very involved with associations along the way, safety, Nova Scotia Trucking Safety Association, Safety Council through the associations. I've been chair of the association, currently vice chair of the Blue Urban Task Force and CTA Executive Committee as well. And I've been on several different safety boards prior to that to kind of help give back to the community at large and move the respective industries forward. It's been a big passion of mine.
So, I mean, to my mind, that doesn't seem like a long timeline from just starting with them to CEO. But the other part of that is you don't seem like regular CEO, like that kind of stuffy C-suite, right? So why?
I think
Right. But I think so too. But I think there's something interesting in there because I made a note from last time we spoke. There was something about you've got a driver advisory board there. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a driver group, monthly advisory group we have that I facilitate every month and meet with our drivers to talk about best practices and issues, concerns, and moving the driver concerns forward. Absolutely.
But did they have, or someone like that, have input into why you as a safety guy into that role versus someone else who maybe has been a CEO?
Oh, and maybe you're thinking, maybe I'm mixing up the advisory board. We have an advisory board, which is more of a financial review board with the shareholders. I think that's what you're referring to. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah, I think what it was all about, I kind of started down that path. I spent a bit of time in HR as well. Back in my time with safety, there was some opportunities that were presented along the way to get into other parts of the business. And a lot of it, to be honest, was I was a safety guy. I think I could describe myself as a pretty good safety guy. I wasn't the best leader. I wasn't at the time. I knew a lot about regulations. I knew a lot about procedures and all those things, but I really didn't play the best in the sandbox, if you know what I mean. I didn't really understand, wasn't the most diplomatic person. I wasn't probably the best well-rounded, interacting interdepartmentally, those types of things. So actually HR was an opportunity that came up to kind of help round off those curves, so sharp edges a bit, and get into that world and learn a little bit more about the, behaviors and people and the dynamics of the business and organizational change and those types of things. So I jumped onto that opportunity pretty quick. And that HR time spent a lot of time on talent management, performance management, in particular, strategic management. So I think that coming back to Eason's, my time and coming into the business, there was an advisory board at the time, and it was about, mostly internal to the company, couple external folks, but they were looking for somebody to help bridge the gap between the three brothers that were in the business to the cousin generation, essentially, which is the hardest generation to transition in, through that, movement of those two generations. So they were looking for somebody that maybe had some of those skill sets. So I think early on, to be honest, Paul Easson, I had a lot of time for Paul. He's a very, anybody that's met Paul Easson over the years, he's a very insightful man, quiet man, but very, very intelligent and smart. And he told me at the time, he said, we're a people business, right? A lot of people would talk about us as it's transportation, but we're a people business. It's all about the people. There's a lot of, and we're going to grow. There's going to be more people. And then there's us as a family, we need some guidance and we need some support, and we need to get through this important to them to get through this in a seamless way, and check off all the boxes. So that succession planning was a big part of what I started to get involved with. And once I started to learn the business, and that was the part that was kind of missing for me, was trucking, understanding that side of it. and with their help and the time in the industry, it all kind of started. Pieces all started to come together. Then I got asked to come to the advisory board to start to talk about succession planning with the kids, and then that's where things really started to happen. It started to gel, and more stuff got added on my plate, so to speak.
So I want to move a little bit between these two levels. And you said that as a safety guy, you had some sharp edges, right? And that won't necessarily work sort of as you move up the ladder. But were you effective in that role? Like, shouldn't a safety guy, have some sharp edges? Like, either you're being safe or you're not, right? Or is that not true?
I think it definitely has its advantages for sure. There's no question. I had a good mentor at the time when I was at Irving. His name is Mark Zimmerman. He really had a lot of respect for him. One thing he said to me once was, "One thing I like about your style, Trevor, is you're aggressive in a non-threatening way." And that always stuck with me because I've been around a lot of folks, not just in safety. Let's face it. I mean, we're kind of talking safety today, but I can think of that, that applies to a lot of different folks in a lot of different roles. But safety kind of tends to have a little bit of that reputation. You know what I mean? We got compliance, and there's that just difference between compliance and training and leading. And I lived in a world where there was a lot of especially at the time, there's a lot of stuff going on, building a new sawmill, and there was a lot of contractors, and compliance was big. And I had no problem being that guy, right? Going out and kind of towing the line and talking to folks and getting them on board. However, I had to get them on board. Sometimes that was a little bit on the direct approach, right? And kind of using the stick. But at no point, I think, and I'm sure I have it because we're all, we're all prone to. There's a line there, right? And sometimes you cross it, sometimes you try. But I always tried to be assertive, passionate about my message and what I needed to do, but in a non-threatening way. I mean, not to belittle people, not to make them feel small, not to make them feel like I was smarter than them and then I knew more just because I had a regulation in my hand, right? I mean, that's a book any of us can pick up and learn if you take the time to understand it. So that didn't make me special. That's just the tools I had to do my job. So I think that's kind of the reputation I got as somebody that was, hey, you know what? Trevor's not going to back down. Very passionate about getting the results, but he's going to work with us to get them, and he's going to listen and understand what the barriers are to kind of within respect to compliance, because it's not always cut and dry, right? It's complex, it's complicated. The issues are complicated. People are complicated. There's different needs and motivations, and you got to be willing to kind of really look at all those angles and not just the black and white side of safety. Is kind of how I see it. It's easy to do that. The hard part is doing it in a way that instills confidence, engages a team, and be willing to say, you know what, I'm okay to go with that person's idea, and take a little bit of a risk, and maybe not also take all the credit, because if you get folks on board and make it their idea, it's going to be one that sticks. That's kind of how it works.
So what kind of advice would you give to some, because there are safety guys out there who just say, I got regs, right? That's it. These are the regs, follow it. And surely, like at one level, that's effective, right? Because they're kind of non-negotiable. But you seem to be hinting at the idea that there's much more to that kind of role and leadership within that role than just, I got regs.
Yeah, look, I back in the sawmill days was a great example of it. We had just take the concept of guarding. You can all visualize that, right? You can visualize a bunch of equipment and pinch points and this and that. And then there's operationally, there's a job that's got to get done. In that world, it was about wood and number of board feet that got through in a shift. And it's really, like keeping it so that the system, and how does safety, interconnect with the system of the production system. Guarding was one of those examples. You take guarding and you could if I went in there and kind of said as a safety person, well, we got to have a guard there, that sprocket, that chain, And the reality is not every scenario is the same. And you put something there and it can cause more problems, right? It can lead to jam ups and it can lead to other hazards that you may not have foreseen. So then you start looking at administrative controls and, you can engineer, ideally you want to engineer things out to the best of your ability. And sometimes when you read the regulation, it almost has that kind of flavor to it, that's the first path you've got to go down is got to go spend a bunch of money. You got to do it this way. This is how. And every safety person wants to eliminate it completely anyway, right? And we don't have the budget, we don't have the purse strings, so but the first thing we go to is oftentimes it's the most expensive thing. Well, that's really operations. If you want to get inside the right mind of an operations person or finance person, they've got budgets, they've got forecasts, so you got to start to get in their mind, say, how do I work this through to get to the point where we start to get safe, make it safe, but then also expose, either it might be a better way or it might be other challenges, those types of things, without compromising safety. And sometimes that's administrative controls, that's SOP, safe work practices, policies, training, you name it. You got to go down that road. So I think if you're very open-minded and collaborative and willing to get to the table and really talk about with the stakeholders about what that might look like and put options on the table, that is that breeds innovation and creativity, and it ultimately leads to success in a mutual kind of win-win scenario.
So let's go up a level now, and at that CEO level, there are obviously a lot more things to take into account. But from the safety perspective, spend the money, right? Keep it safe. Is there anything that surprised you in the role that you are now? Things that just weren't even on your radar back then, but you can now see that it is sort of an integral part of running the whole system and also about making things safer?
Well, I think that the big eye opener for me is, the more time you spend with those folks in those roles. In my role as CEO, I've got 10 direct reports, from finance to continuous improvement, GMs, equipment, all of it. So I spend a lot more time with those folks at that level, and you start to see things through a different lens, no question. So you start to hear the tug of war between, production and operational demands and safety and HR. There's HR has their needs too, from a human behavioral standpoint, from procedures and following the rules and doing checklists and forms and all those types of things that take time. So, I guess that the advantage to that is you get to kind of help people see the bigger picture and see how things interconnect, and share those needs and draw parallels between what other folks are trying to do and what you're trying to do. So, might be talking to somebody in equipment, and you might draw that like, oh, well, safety just wants a checklist, and you're asking your inventory for warranty work, you're asking for the same thing. So what's the difference? Or DVIR and how that connects into TMT with a maintenance system. And you start to be able to lead better and show those gaps and show people how really you have a lot more in common with folks with, safety and operations have a lot more in common than what you think, because you really have very similar kind of mandates that you're trying to do, whether it's safety trying to engage folks around a procedure or policy to keep them safe, or it's operations trying to engage a team around KPIs and metrics and even work instructions or CSR to do things in a certain way, a customer service rep within TruckMate. And I need you to follow this and fill this in, and I need you to do it this way. And it's all about process management. Everything we do is about process management. And I think that is the type where my mind is at 99% of the time is how do we improve on our processes and how can we help each other do that?
I have a question on that, actually. So in the CEO's job at the most fundamental level is to grow the value of the business. And a lot of people that are in a leadership position focus on kind of the revenue and cost reduction sides of that. Let's grow the revenue and reduce our costs, and that will grow the value of the business. But that can sometimes be a very short-term thing, because if you don't have sufficient safeguards in place, you can end up being in trouble down the road. The short-term growth, short-term building of the value of the business might end up biting you in the butt later on if you haven't put the safeguards in place. So how do you balance those things? I mean, you're going to have an advisory board that you have to answer to as far as growing the business and making their investment more valuable. So how do you balance that with all of the safeguards that are going to be longer term benefits but shorter term pains?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think at anywhere I've worked, this is the easiest place I've ever had to do that. And the reason in trucking that it is because if any CEO or leadership person just talks about revenue and reducing costs without thinking about safety, especially the cost of safety and transportation and the exposures and the liability and risk, you're missing a very, very, very big piece of the puzzle. Especially in our business, we're refrigerated carriers. So the commodity that we haul, the food for perishable goods, it's worth a lot of money, right? It's you take a load of frozen pies, it's 80 some thousand bucks. You take a load of crab, it's worth 250,000, or a load of meat that could be up to $400,000 worth of goods. It's worth more than the truck and trailer, sometimes combined. So, I look at financial statements and I almost always go to the category other items, which speaks to claims and accidents, because it almost is more indicative of how your month's going to turn out. I look at those numbers. So I would say that the safety and claims folks are probably, I spend quite a bit of time with them understanding the risk of the business and what they're doing to manage the risk within the business. So I don't, albeit revenue, it's king, right? Miles is king in this business. So you got to be just as focused on those things, and you don't have to worry about risk if you're not putting miles on. So it's all part and parcel, and they all go hand in hand. But I would say with my team, I spend equal amount of time with everybody, right? I spend we have a safety lead person here, and they get their hour and a half of every month with me to talk about what they're doing in the business to drive improvements. And we have lots of checkpoints throughout the course of the month and quarters to make sure that they're getting the support that they need, because everybody needs that support, and making sure that we're aligned and that we're heading down the right road. But I guess to answer your question, Mark, you're bang on revenue. You're bang on in managing expenses, especially in a year like this year. But boy, I'll tell you, the safety KPIs, especially on the risk side of the business, is a very, very huge part of it, which makes the safety leadership roles exceptionally important in the business, that they are engaged, aligned, and they're running on all cylinders.
That's a really good point that you mentioned in there that I think a lot of people aren't aware of when looking at the financial statements. Looks at the other items, because that's where all the real meat is.
It's often where the biggest story is, right? There's lots of variations in market that we got to just live with, and on volume and revenue and rates, but those trucks are out on the road each and every day, and it is exceptionally hard. And that's the other thing that's for me is a big eye opener, where we need a lot more support in this industry, is that it's not like when I was at Irving, it was the green box, right? I went down to the mill and we could pull a meeting together, have every employee on site in one spot in about 10 minutes, right? As long as you got the KFC bucket there and you dialed it up, and it was on shift time. You had everybody there, and pretty much everybody was listening. But in this business, you've got 340 trucks running around that you've got to manage from a distance, right? I mean, just how you do that with the telematics and all, and then the different personalities. And let's face it, drivers for the most part get into this industry or this type of career because, especially long haul, because they want to be independent. They want to work, not be under the microscope, so to speak, right? They want to be out there doing their thing. So when you start talking about dashboards and inward facing cameras and all these types of things that we're talking about in the industry today, right? It's a whole new set of challenges to get people's head around heading down that road. And that takes really strong leadership to get those things done and get it done right so that you can move forward and actually get the true benefits of those types of investments.
So speaking of leadership, so I want to, if I'm thinking about a safety guy, and I want to talk about two different directions of leadership. So in terms of managing the drivers, right? You're not the ultimate boss, right? If CEO comes down and says, this is the way it's going to go, this is the way it's going to go. But the safety guy, he's not exactly in that position, but still responsible for that. And so there's a certain kind of there's a set of qualities that he's going to need to manage those drivers. And then going the other way, it's almost like he's got to have a different hat if he's going to try and talk to you in the CEO role. You know, I've got this new idea, and they're just different things that you're going to be looking at. So on that driver perspective, how do you get people to go along with it when you aren't their ultimate boss? You're the safety guy, but you're not the CEO.
Yep, that is a challenge. I think there's a couple different angles we could answer that question. One is we need to have really good procedures and policies and things in place so that, you know, and people are trained on them so that there's a common language and a common reference point, so that when someone, whether it's a safety person or a fleet manager or whoever it is, comes to have a conversation with a driver, it's objective, right? It's not subjective. It's not the flavor of the day. It's meaningful. And you got to have a process around performance management too. It's not just, it's not a willy-nilly thing that you can just, just expect a person to kind of ad hoc do it. You need a really good process around performance management, and be willing to commit to performance improvement plans, right? Be it remedial training for drivers in the cab, or just taking a carrier's edge course as part of a refresher to, or it's actually taking the that disciplinary process to the next step and doing something a little bit more concrete. We do it more collaboratively, so there's a bit of a review group that gets together with safety, so they're not alone on any performance management. There is an tiering and an escalation too, so that our lead fleet manager does a lot of the verbal and written warnings themselves, engaging operations, because I think that also builds the credibility around your procedures and policies and the commitment to safety. And it's not just the safety guy, because if you have that kind of culture, then I think you've got one person that's yielding the stick, then you're back to that compliance kind of mentality. And here comes the safety guy, here he comes, and versus, geez, I've been in with Rob twice this month. I've been talked about my speed, I've been talking about my hard braking, and now they've brought, now it's escalated to suspension, and now HR and safety are there at the table to talk about the severity of it, to kind of make it more of a, it adds that value to the process. And I think that's important. The other thing is just commitment from the top. I mean, that's always been said. It sounds a little cliche-ish, but it is very true. And the autonomy to do it, not always run into the CEO or somebody to say, look, here, I know we need drivers this month, so can we, do you want me to lax up on this one, or do you want me to? And there's that ebb and flow with drivers anyway, depending on the market. That's always an undercurrent that's happening. We talk about that a lot, right? Is it a driver's market, or is it not a driver's market? Like, where is it? So you're always tempering that. I've always said to our team is there's an escalation within the disciplinary process for a reason. What I expect you to do is be consistent. Don't let anything go, right? Always have the conversation, always document it, always exercise due diligence. That is the culture. That's what you need to do. We'll have those tough discussions on whether we're going to let somebody go or we're going to suspend them or whatever that looks like within the context of that process. But be consistent. You can't, and I think that for any good safety person, they'll push for that level of consistency, regardless of what kind of support they have around them. You have to be consistent. The minute you stop and the minute it becomes, you put a gap in that, in that kind of oversight and that kind of accountability, you're going to have a problem. And it doesn't always have to be the stick. It's again working in the proactive things, so the positive training, conversation based, kind of putting in front of them and let those folks have the opportunity to improve. Yeah. So you go ahead. Sorry, Rick.
No, it's just that I've had conversations with people in the industry where they'll say, yeah, it's a driver's market. Maybe we're a little bit softer right now. And
yeah.
And what you're saying is, even in the face of, look, we're going to be short. We got to, the procedures say we got to fire these guys. So let's say we're at that level, and we're going to be short drivers. You got to do it anyway.
Yeah, and I guess it always depends on the situation dependent, right? It depends on if somebody has, start looking at malicious intent and, whether it's, what type of situation is it, what's going on? Is the person remorseful? Is there there's a lot that goes on because the policy isn't that strict that it's, boom, you hit your fourth thing this week and it was, you did do a pre-trip inspection and your fourth one, you're done. It's not, if that was the case, we wouldn't have any drivers, not just in our company, because pre-trips is probably one of the biggest challenges we have is getting folks to do pre-trips, but yet it's compliance, isn't it? Drives everybody bananas, right? You got to lead people to the water to drink, and you got to see, they got to see the value in it. But it's, there's lots of companies that go the nth degree and some of them do it for them. And, but the reality is that let's take that one item right there. If everybody was honest on this phone, you have a trucking company and you would just talk about pre-trips and compliance, and you really wanted to put the hammer down, it would be a tough old road, wouldn't it? And the outcome would probably be, probably wouldn't be very favorable for a lot of drivers until the word got out there. But I just think that there's the accountability and the consistency piece is important because there's we're a very heavily regulated industry. Insurance is watching, the regulators, we're federal, there's folks watching. We got to be consistent and show that we're demonstrating that level of due diligence, especially in the face of the type of industry we are, where it's very difficult to get in front of folks, to performance manage them and to have oversight over them. So we've got to demonstrate that at a high level because the risk is just so high. It's getting with punitive damages and nuclear verdicts and all these things that are happening out there. You have to be on safety folks when they speak and they push for that level of consistency. I know for me as a leader, I'm all over it because I know what it means on the other side. I've been, where injuries have taken us to court. I've been in the courtroom. I've done that. I've seen people, maimed, injured, to the point where they can't return to work. So I know what that looks like on the other side of it. That's not where you want to be. And if you end up there, you got to make sure you feel like you can sleep at night, that you've done everything reasonable to protect their well-being and the public's, because we've got that to consider too. It's not just their well-being. It's our job goes beyond the driver. It's the driver and the motoring public and your family, my family, our kids, my kids, your kids are out there on the road, sharing the road. So we just, it isn't confined to a plant. It's literally our work is done every day out there, and the impacts are very, there's a lot of breadth to it. So, yeah.
We have a question from the audience that I think takes us in a bit of a different direction. How would you approach managers and supervisors to get them engaged more in safety?
Well, you do that with some metrics. There's a few different ways for sure. Metrics is one of them. We do scorecarding and we do incentives based around safety. We get them involved in our safety committee groups, our driver rep groups that bring safety, that has safety on the agenda. There's certainly, things like engage them in the day-to-day from hours of service for oversight is one example, and training to ensure that they understand their responsibilities. We're starting a whole new series on frontline supervisory training next week, actually, and it's something that I'm doing the first session to kick off the session on effective communication, not necessarily safety, but yet indirectly it is, right? Because that communication piece, what you're communicating to a driver, is important, and it can lead to, just especially with the instructions on the load and where they're going and requirements for on time and things. Because then drivers, if they don't really fully understand, they start to do things like push the envelope, drive beyond their, maybe their capabilities in some cases. So communication is exceptionally important. So I think you gotta have a good training program for your frontline staff, um, and make sure they understand the regulations. So take that time. So we have a whole, suite for new hires coming on, especially I keep going, I know we're here at Carrier's Edge, but we are a customer and we use a lot of the information and the training tools in there to have a suite that's required at a certain level. It's not negotiable. It's mandatory. You have to take, US, Canada, hours of service, PDIC training, all kinds of things. So it's to be able to relate and understand what the drivers are going through. I know myself personally, just to take that to the next level. I'm not the only one that's done that. There's always been, especially with drivers, you don't have your class one, right? You don't have your class one, so how could you possibly understand, Mark, how I do my job and what the requirements and demands are on your job? And I'm going to tell you, I've heard that a lot over the years, directed at me myself. Well, I went and got my class one just to get to do it, and just to say a process. And I drive a little bit here and there, for no other reason, just for the credibility and and making sure that they understand, that we understand what it is that they actually do. So I think that's the other side of it, is that, if you have a fleet manager that's not putting themselves in their shoes, not, hasn't been out for a drive in a truck, hasn't been out to kind of see, sit in a truck and do all those things, you got to be relatable. And you got to be able to pull, get from that, in that driver's perspective, and that's some ways you can do it. It's not to suggest that an effective leader has to have class one. I'm not suggesting that, because that's not true. But I think good, effective middle managers understand they're also pulled in a lot of different directions, right? I mean, they got a lot of folks to certainly got the driver themselves. They got the operations team. They've got HR. They're pulled in a lot of different directions as a supervisor. So those that take the time to really understand a driver's issue, like really understand, listen, and really try to understand what they're saying, and then move that concern upward, right? Take that and escalate their concern and problem. Those are effective leaders within that fleet management world.
One of the things where we see some gaps sometimes is a disconnect between what the managers and supervisors have as their incentives or the metrics that they're measured on. And if they're measured too much on productivity, you can say all you want about safety, but their measurement, I mean, they're paid based on productivity. So how do you make sure that you've got alignment in all of those things?
Well, we use balanced scorecards that has a weight on both safety and operations. But we also talk a lot about, productivity as a result of folks being safe and that's truck uptime. Like if a truck's down and it's damaged, it's not putting on miles, right? It's not being utilized. If a driver is home because they're injured or homesick or home, just off and they can't, then that's another drive, not that many more miles and utilization that they don't get, as well as the company doesn't get afforded to meet their overall requirements, right? Because we have a size and a size of a fleet that requires a certain amount of utilization, so for it to work. So I think if you build the culture around that side of things, the urgency to, deal with issues, solve problems, keep the truck and keep the driver happy and safe and healthy, and the uptime, it's of a benefit to everybody. So there's not a direct KPI you can put on that necessarily to say, you know what, we had this many trucks on the road, and we don't use that to say this is our uptime and this is what that looks like and translates into revenue, et cetera. We don't necessarily do it that way, but I think the general culture here is around that sense of urgency for the driver. I think of, I'm not going to think of his name, probably the guy from Texas in the blue shirt, the training videos that we did, Dan Baker. Remember, videos about get him loaded, get him paid, get him home, whatever, those. really, those are the principles, isn't it? With drivers, it's pretty simple. Those are the pillars, and you focus on those things, um, and and the rest kind of works out. But yeah, you're right. I mean, safety, and you put metrics, and sometimes they get stale, so you got to keep them fresh, and you got to keep it achievable too, right? You can't have numbers and targets that aren't achievable, because that gets pretty demotivating as well. So you got to kind of always be looking at where the business is and making sure those are kept up to keep folks engaged.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I imagine there are people watching or who will watch the recording of this who are in companies that don't have the culture that yours does, right? It seems like there's Eason's has already built all this stuff, and you're speaking the safety language, and these things are moving. But what if I dropped Trevor Bent into a new company that did not have that, and I have supervisors and managers who are just like making money, pushing those miles, just productivity. Where do you start? Right? Well, you got to have a culture, but but
Yep. Well, I think it's funny. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, John Cotterill. I told him I might use his name today. He's the general manager of Clark Road here in Halifax, and John has a very similar story as mine. Right? He probably even more relevant in a way, because he started out as a driver and moved his way up through the ranks as a G and safety and HR, and now he's the general manager of a good size dry van group here with Clark Road. Anyway, I asked him the question about him and I were talking about just how do you keep the chalk behind the wheels, so to speak. So it's about, to me, about, not to use the pun, but chalk behind the wheels. He, like me, I write everything down. I got action lists, and I keep track of everything. I don't forget too much. I think it's about accountability, right? It's a process and it's a culture. So you have to start with accountability. So you need to build up around a form of accountability to make sure that folks know you're serious and it's not just a flavor of the day. Right. So if I come in and I just say, hey guys, we're going to start with we're going to be the next, safety is going to be the thing. And we're all of a sudden a Josh committee meeting happens for 4 months, and then boom, it falls off. It stops. Or you have a round table if you're small and you've got 3 or 4 folks and you want to talk about, and then it stops. If you have discipline one driver, then all of a sudden it stops. To me, where I start is the fundamentals, is the key things around what's important, what are the key things within that industry that are really important, really key safety metrics and KPIs. I'd pull them together and I'd keep it simple. I'd be starting to look at 1 or 2 of those things, get it in front of the leadership in a very quantitative way, right? To be able to show the numbers and show something, and then get the buy-in and show that we can move the needle and make a difference, and then show the return on that investment. Keep it simple. The other thing is follow-up. I think that, and I say this when I look at our whole organization and the leadership team that we have here, I see a lot of people, a lot of leaders, management, upper, middle, doesn't matter, that don't write things down. It's unbelievable the amount of conversations that you have with people and through those conversations, expectations and action lists come out, and people do not write them down, and how many people forget what they've committed to. It is rampant. Number one thing that I see, call it the herd and the kittens, but really it's really about and you shouldn't have to micromanage. I don't mean it this way, but you need to be, if you were a new safety person and there's commitments and things that are being, committed to, and there's action items that come out of meetings and things, you have to be good at following up to make sure they get done. Because if they can't count on you to do that, right, to follow through and make sure that that's going to get done, they'll lose the folks, especially in upper management, will lose confidence and trust in you. And then it becomes flavor of the day for you as a safety person, right? I said I was going to get this SOP written up and it was going to be here next Tuesday. Next Tuesday comes, it's not written up and it's not on my desk. Okay, how important is it?
Yeah, that's a great point.
How important is it? So if you're a safety person and you're going to, you need to, you need to lead by example. That's key too, right? You can't be that guy that or gal that runs out in the site and doesn't have their hard hat on and doesn't have their safety vest on. So you had to be consistent. You had to lead by example, and you have to follow up on your commitments. And with management, you have to show them some connection with how you are going to, it's going to impact the business in a positive way. And every owner and every CEO is going to have different set of values. So it might just be, it might be enough to just say, I'm not hurting people, right? We're not hurting people. It may mean more that you need to show that there is an actual return on the investment, right? So if I'm going to put inward facing cameras in, which is what I just said to our safety manager the other day, that's great, but it's it's $150,000 extra investment next year. So I need this return on investment from reduction in accident costs. Are we good? We're good. You make that commitment, you're going to help us get there 100%. All right, then let's go. Let's do it. And you got to have people that you can count on. They're going to put a good plan together, right? And they're going to really set a set of goals. They're going to work collaboratively with the team, stakeholders, and get that job done. Because that decision is going to cost, and it could cost you if you do it poorly by just losing drivers too, right? You may find that you lose good drivers as a result of it as well, on top of the fact that you don't reduce accident costs. So I think those are some thoughts, and maybe that's more than what you asked, but I think that would be some of my thoughts if you were starting new.
Yeah. So I think there's a connection here. You said something last time we spoke, and it's a phrase that I wanted to get your thoughts on. You call it the reverse pyramid of leadership.
Yep.
I don't know what that is.
Well,
or maybe I do. I don't know.
I'm learning. So I said it in the context. Our VP of Sales, Andrew Robertson, his brother wrote a book, and it's called Leadership from the Foundation Up, and it's right here. So I'm really just getting into it. But you can see the arrow pointing up. So a lot of traditional management systems and organizational structures are kind of geared around, the CEOs at the top, and everybody feeds up from the bottom up to the top somehow. And so, this system I don't know if it's I'm the person that always, got to make the final call, the final say, whatever. Which really, I don't believe in that. I think I'm really interested in reading his book to hear Glenn's insights, because I see myself as a CEO as an enabler person. That's probably comes from my time in safety and HR, as being more of an enabler in the business and more of a leader breeder, not a leader blocker. Is really to get the workforce as close as they can to the customers, for example, and to the vendors and all the folks. Not, if you can get those folks engaged and more involved in the decision making, and that I'm just here to help them. So I'm more at the bottom, helping to push up and hold the team, up and supported. Then you kind of see that reverse pyramid kind of concept kind of starting to shape up. So through my whole career, I've always thought about, wouldn't it be nice to work myself out of a job? It's that kind of philosophy. And that's how I come to work is, can I work myself out of a job? And the reality is, if you have that mindset, you never will, because you'll always be looked at as somebody that's going to take on more. I remember doing safety, and my manager at the time, Lloyd, he came to me and said, Trevor, I want you to take on quality. I'm like, okay, quality. What's that even like? What's that even look like? I said, why would you ask me? He said, I just looked around. And he said, I found the busiest person, and I'm going to give it to you because the busiest people always get it done. So I'm like, well, that's not a good reason, but I don't know if I'll do it well. But I think, if you can identify leaders and future leaders to jump in, and that can be a driver that wants to be a coach in a truck, right? That could be, because that's a future leader that's going to take and train folks to get them growing in the business. To somebody on the dock that trains somebody how to do forklift training, or somebody in dispatch that's exceptionally good that can bring on and orientate somebody to your dispatch system exceptionally well. let them be at the front and center and the top of all those activities to drive it and be and really hone the craft and take the credit and recognize them and be there in the background to help them achieve that success.
So there are people in those roles who might be suited for leadership in one sense. Their understanding of people, their command of people, but if you were to ask them, they're like, I am not CEO material. I don't know anything about this, right? Was there a turning point for you where you came up through, you're like, oh, actually, maybe I can do this. But before that point, you're like, I don't know anything about that side of the business.
There was two I call TSN turning points. It was two turning points. One was back at Irving. I had a manager at the time, and he asked me in a performance review where I saw myself in 5 years, and I said, I really see myself as the safety manager over this particular area, and I want to grow. I want to be a process owner in the business. I want to do this, and he just looked at me as serious as can be and said, "Not going to happen." And I said, "What do you mean it's not going to happen?" He said, "You're a really good safety guy from a regulatory standpoint, but you lack diplomacy. You just do not have, you're not diplomatic enough, and you don't understand what it takes to work with all the stakeholders to get full engagement." And I'm like, okay, so where do we go from here? That doesn't, I'm not like, it was honest. But that's where it led me to HR. And I said, well, what do I need to do? He said, I would recommend you take a couple of years in HR to take the edges off and really work with the people, really start to understand and get yourself uncomfortable. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So, that led me to those opportunities where in the end, when I left the company, I was a safety process owner for all the English speaking side of the sawmills and forestry groups. So, and when I started, I was overseeing safety for one of our mills. It was a really great opportunity to meet, and the other thing, it just opened up so many doors to meet so many amazing people. I got to get to corporate and meet the folks at the corporate level, and I was just a quick story, which this could relate to safety. We talked about planning and having a good plan, but I remember running into one of the Irvings at a wellness clinic once, and they had, they really didn't know who I was, but they walked up and said, how things going at this particular mill? And I said, well, spring breakup was a little hard to get some of the wood's not, the weather's bad. It's hard to get into the woods, get the wood up. But we're hoping the weather's going to turn and we'll be able to get those logs in, Mr. Irving. And all I remember him saying was, "Hope's not a plan, son. You better make a plan." And I'll never forget that in my whole life, is that, we can sit around hoping that things will get better. We can sit there and talk about it, but you need a plan, and you need to develop a plan, and safety folks need to be part of that. It's not just coming to an executive to say, here's my problem. You need to come with solutions. You need to come with a plan. You need to come with options. You need to come with cost, return on investment, all those things. Today in business, you need to do those things because you need to be validated, right? Things need to be validated. The second TSN turning point for me was moving from safety HR to the CEO role. And it wasn't quite as direct. It was more Paul saying, I think you'll be good at this, so that's what you're going to do next. And I'd like getting it. And I said, well, why? And he said, the way I see it, it's a people business, and I need somebody to help focus more on the people within the business. And two is, and for the last 6 years, you've not gotten us into any trouble. So I feel like you're diligent, you think things through, you have a plan, and I feel like you're going to take this on, and you're not going to deviate from that kind of philosophy, that protect the company, understand the risks, and you'll learn the rest of it. So take that for what it is. But two great mentors. If I can say anything, if you can get mentors, if you can find a mentor and you can get lined up with a mentor, do it. I've had probably about 5 or 6 in my career, and one of the strongest in the trucking business for me was Shane Easson with Midland. He's retired now, but boy, I'll tell you, great man, and very kept it pretty simple. Said, Trevor, in this new role, 2 things you got to remember people's names. That's important, and spend a lot of time with your customers. And I think that goes for your internal and external customers as well, right? Spend as much time where you can with your front line, and with your customer base, because ultimately that's why we're all here, is for our customers. So everything we do, including safety, is to add value to them, to keep costs down, to be able to provide the service. It's pretty simple for customers. It's on-time service, and they want the freight to show up the same way the way they expect it, whether it's dry, whether it's frozen, whether it's fresh. It doesn't matter. They want the product there on time. They want it there in the condition that they expect it to land in. So safety has a direct impact on that one, for sure.
So we're coming up on it. I feel like if we were going to package some takeaways for, let's say, a safety person who just wants to be better at their job.
Yep.
And I feel like relating to their drivers, understand that they're people, right? Be clear about your expectations and be consistent.
Yep.
But going up, trying to get something through, maybe you've got there's a new training program that you're really excited about. Well, being excited about it isn't going to get the check signed.
No. So
you got to understand the language of the people above you and say, all right, this is the ROI. This is why I'm doing it. This is right. Speak their language. So in 2 different directions. Yep. Be multilingual, I guess, is the
100%. You have to learn to speak their language. Yep. I think that's really, really critical. And it's hard to do, because most of us are, there's a little bit of the anecdotal side. You don't want to tell the story. Well, telling the story verbally is different than telling the story with numbers or on a piece of paper. They're 2 different things, and not everybody is competent in doing that. But there's folks within organizations, depending on the size, that you might lean on to help with that, right? It could be finance. It could be, just like I said, it could be a mentor that you might want to look at. There's training that's out there for folks. We're embarking at Easson on Lean Six Sigma, for example, and that's one, probably a little more on the higher end side, and in terms of commitment and time and cost, but I guess for me, it's about, if I had to put it in one word, and you wrap up, because continuous improvement wraps up a lot of stuff, right? It's about how you deal with people, how you engage stakeholders, how you identify the problem, how do you present that problem. So if you as a safety person can build a brand of continuous improvement and not continuous compliance, then I think you will have achieved something great.
Bingo. Continuous improvement, not continuous compliance.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right.
Trevor Bent, I really want to thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
This has been illuminating. And if there are any other questions from the audience, please, you can email them to us. Let us know. And again, thank you so much for this really insightful session.
Yes. Thanks, Trevor.
All the best to all those safety folks out there. What you do, I can say as a person, it's not the most gratifying job sometimes, because it's doesn't, all the efforts don't always go recognized, but know that it is appreciated, even though some folks don't always say it, but it is exceptionally important what you do. It is appreciated what you do, and it's value added what you do. So good luck in the future, everybody. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks.